I'm so excited for this video because fall is my favorite seasons makeup wise. At least eyeshadow palette wise. I do love a dark grungy look, a lot of warm tones. Those are definitely my favorite, and that's what I like to wear during the fall. So for this video, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite high-end eyeshadow palettes that are perfect for the fall, and I'm also going to share with you some of my drugstore dupes for those palettes, or if it's not dupes, it's an alternative for these palettes, like palettes that do remind me of the same, you know, like look. Basically I can get the same look with them, the same vibe. So if you're interested, keep on watching, and if you're new here, please make sure to subscribe before you leave so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Now let's get into it. Alright you guys, I'm gonna start with one palette that's definitely my favorite palette. Yeah, I know there's a lot of controversy around this palette, or when it first came out, but I really enjoy it. I enjoy the formula, I enjoy the colors, and it definitely reminds me of fall. And the palette that I'm referring to is Anastasia Beverly Hills, the Subculture palette. I completely understand that a lot of people might have difficulty working with this palette. It is not an easy palette to work with. There's definitely a lot of fallout. It's powdery. The blending can be a little bit of a challenge. It's not a palette that you can just pull out in the morning and expect to do a 10-minute look with and then you're good to go. No, you really need to spend a little bit of time with this palette. Take your time building the colors, blending the colors, and all of that. But here's what the palette looks like. Definitely a lot of warm tones. On the side, all of these colors are fall colors to me. I think of the leaves turning and, like, I don't know, warm cozy blankets when I look at these colors in this little spot over here. Yeah, I really enjoy this palette. It definitely has a special place in my heart. Now, the palette that I would recommend for someone else who's not looking to spend the $42 on this palette, or I do think now it's being sold at like TJ Maxx or Marshalls, or it's been on sale for half off, or I believe it's been half off, like $26, $27, or maybe $30. So if you don't want to spend that kind of money, if you're kind of nervous about working with that kind of palettes, with the fallout and all of that, I would recommend this palette, and this is by Makeup Revolution. It is $7, so you do get the same sort of vibes of colors, like those mossy greens, the foresty greens. You do get the oranges, a little bit of that purple. You do get all of these vibes from the same palette that would remind you a lot of the Subculture palette. It is a lot easier to work with. The Makeup Revolution palette is a lot easier to work with because the formula is a little bit drier. You don't get as much fallout or kick up when you dip your brush into it. The Revolution palette, it's definitely more user friendly. It's great for someone who's starting with makeup. It's great for someone that, let's say you want to do your look in 10 minutes in the morning. This is a lot easier to work with than this, and you can still get the same vibe. The only shade that I would say is missing that I really love in here is the shade All Star. But for example, the shade Adjourn is exactly like this shade over here. So there's a lot of similarities. You definitely can get the same look. This would take you, this requires some building, a lot easier for someone who's new in makeup, not very experienced, still learning. This definitely needs a lot of patience. You need time in the morning if you're trying to get ready. But I love both of them. I would recommend both of them. In my opinion, they're dupe to each other. They're not formula dupes, but they're definitely color dupes. Okay, the second palette on my list is also by Anastasia Beverly Hills, and it is the Soft Glam palette. To some people, this might seem kind of boring palette, neutrals, but that's kind of what I look for a fall palette. The colors in here are very warm tone. There are some neutrals in here, but they are deeper neutrals. I do love the red tones in here. I do love this gold. I really enjoy this palette. It's not as hard to work with as the Subculture palette. There's still a little bit of kick up for sure, but it's easier to blend than the Subculture palette. A little dab in your brush and you're good to go. You just don't swirl your brush in there because you're gonna get a lot of kick up. It's gonna be very hard to blend because they are very pigmented. I absolutely love this palette. It definitely is a solid like fall palette for me. I have taken it on travel for work a couple times. For like 2 weeks solid, I was still able to create very nice looks. It is a little bit easier to create a look with it in the morning. You're not rushed in time. Like, sorry, it doesn't require as much time as the Subculture would. So it's a little bit easier to work with. It's still very beautiful. You're gonna get very nice warm looks with it. I absolutely love it. I love this formula. The palette that kind of reminds me of it, and I would call it not an exact dupe, but I could get very similar looks with it using this palette, is the e.l.f. Soft Gold Sunset. It's called Soft Gold Sunset. Wow, that's an interesting name. Why did I think it was called something else? This is the 10 pan palette from e.l.f. These are usually $10, but you can get these on sale. e.l.f. does quite a bit, like 50% off their website sale kind of thing. So you could get this for half off for $5 if you order from the e.l.f. website, but I do believe this is also at Target, so you can just go into Target, pick it up. $10. The soft glam is $42, so you're saving 3/4 the price, or $32 to be exact. Here are the two palettes right next to each other. There are quite a few similarities in here. They're not exact shades, but you can create very, very similar looks with these two palettes. You're not gonna get like the same exact look, but you'll still get the same vibe, the same warm tones, the same browns and a little bit of reddish. The e.l.f. palette has what really has something really nice going for it is that green shade here in the middle. I love this shade. This one right here, it is beautiful, and that's lacking in this palette. So kind of like, hey, you get a bonus shade that you can create different looks with alongside the rest of this palette. But nevertheless, these two palettes are very comparable to each other. The formula is definitely different. The e.l.f. formula is a little bit drier, but still blends very nicely. This has to be one of my favorite palettes that e.l.f. has created, the 10 pan palettes. I've tried the matte for matte and, well, yeah, 2 or 3 of them. I didn't like them. The formula, I did not like the formula as much, but this formula for this specific palette, I absolutely love. I would recommend both of these palettes if you're looking for an alternative to the soft glam. That green, you're looking for that special olive green, get the e.l.f. palette. You'll still get very similar looks as you would get with a soft glam. Wow, I feel like I've been rambling for quite some time. All right, let's move on. The next palette that I do have is, it's been out for a while. I love it. I bust it out every once in a while when I really want some warm tones. And that's the Naked Heat by Urban Decay. Okay, where do I begin with this palette? I have a couple of the Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes. I have the, you know, the first Naked, the second, I did not buy the second, the first Naked, Naked 3, and I have the Naked Smoky, and then I picked this guy up. I was very hesitant because my last experience with the Naked palettes was the Naked Smoky, and I just did not like it. So I picked this guy up just because I really love warm tones. I really like those burnt reds. This palette just screams fall to me. Again, the warm, the burnt colors, it's absolutely beautiful. The formula in this is so different than the other Naked palettes. I don't know about the Run, is it Born to Run or the new Naked Cherry? I haven't tried either of those, but the formula of this one is way better than the Naked 3, the first Naked, and the Naked Smoky. I would really recommend that palette. Now, an alternative to that palette, it's not an exact dupe, but I get the same vibes. Those really warm tones, the burnt colors, and that's what I'm wearing on my eyes today. And that is also by Revolution, and this is the Reloaded Newtrals 2 palette. I do get very similar vibes with this palette as I do get with the Naked palette. They kind of look a little bit more pinky in the pan, and that's because they are a little bit more pinky, but there's also other colors in the Revolution palette that are very similar to the Naked palette, the Naked Heat palette. This is what they look like right next to each other. The formula of this specific Revolution palette is a lot better than the formula of the first Revolution palette. Did I even say what it was called? It was the Division, that which I compared to the Subculture palette. The formula of this one, this specific one, Newtrals 2, is way more creamy, easier to blend than the Division palette. It's very pigmented. It's absolutely gorgeous on the eyes. You're not gonna get the same exact look, like definitely missing a shade like this from the Revolution palette. Nevertheless, you can create very similar looks with this, the Revolution palette, and it is $7. The Naked Heat is what now, $54. So you're saving a lot of money. I would really recommend this if you're looking for this kind of vibe. This is absolutely beautiful. Another eyeshadow palette that I think of when I think of fall is the Modern Renaissance palette. I'm not I know you're probably very familiar with this palette, but again, this palette can be used all year around. The colors in here are absolutely beautiful. You have very nice combination of cool tones, warm tones. You can create deep looks, lighter looks. It's a beautiful palette to use all year round, but I especially like it for the fall, especially because of those really deep berry shades in here, as well as like the burnt oranges in here. A palette that really reminds me of this, and it's, I don't know that I'm gonna say dupe, because technically dupe should be a cheaper price, but maybe you want to try a different formula other than the Anastasia formula, and that's the e.l.f. palette, not e.l.f., Too Faced palette, and it's the Just Peachy mattes. Here, both of the palettes right next to each other. You can definitely see that there's a lot of similarities between those two palettes. The berry tones definitely are in there. Again, this is another palette that really reminds me of fall. It is beautiful. It's very nicely scented. I would have to say that this is one of the better, I keep want to say e.l.f., but it's Too Faced. One of the better Too Faced formulas that I have in my collection. It's all matte, so you're not gonna get like the shimmery shades that you would get in the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette, but still you can create very similar looks, beautiful looks, easy to blend, probably a little bit easier to blend than the Modern Renaissance. Now the other palette that I really think is a very close dupe, or maybe an exact dupe in color, like color wise, to the Modern Renaissance palette, is the Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air palette. This is, I think it's like $5.99, $6.99, maybe even like $4.99. You can pick it up at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS. I even think that this is being sold at ULTA now, because they do have some Wet n Wild items. I would say, like, I'm not gonna go out and say that Wet n Wild was intentioning, or maybe they did intentionally try and dupe the Modern Renaissance palette. Here are the two palettes right next to each other. Let me see how I'm gonna do this. So here are the two palettes right next to each other. There are definitely some color dupes in here. If you're interested in a dupe video for those two palettes, I'll be more than happy to do it. I'll do one palette on one eye, the other on the other eye, but I do think that this has been duped before on YouTube, so you can just search for it and you'll find it. Both of them are really beautiful, really easy to work with. Like the Modern Renaissance is one of the easiest Anastasia formulas to work with. Actually, the Soft Glam reminds me a lot of the Modern Renaissance formula-wise, and there are some shades in the Soft Glam that are also in the Modern Renaissance. But the Wet n Wild palette, again, is really easy to work with, blends beautifully, it has the same colors, so there you have it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you like the idea of these kind of videos, let me know in the comments below. If you are curious about any specific palette, also let me know. I would love to chat with you, and give this video a like, Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.